Wow. After closing arguments, the defense requested the judge declare a mistrial over comments from Congresswoman Maxine Waters urging protesters to, quote, get more confrontational if Chauvin is found not guilty.
An elected official, United States congressperson, was making what I interpreted to be, and what I think are reasonably interpreted to be, threats against the sanctity of the jury process.
I'll give you that Congresswoman Waters may have given you something on appeal that may result in this whole trial being overturned. But what's the state's position? This goes back to what I've been saying from the beginning. I wish elected officials would stop talking about this case, especially in a manner that is disrespectful to the rule of law and to the judicial branch and our function. Their failure to do so, I think, is abhorrent, but I don't think it has prejudiced us with additional material that would prejudice this jury. They have been told not to watch the news. I trust they are following those instructions, and that there is not in any way a prejudice to the defendant beyond the articles that we're talking specifically about the facts of this case. A congresswoman's opinion really doesn't matter a whole lot.
Here is what Congresswoman Waters said on Saturday.
We're looking for a guilty verdict. I am very hopeful, and I hope that we're going to get a verdict that is say guilty, guilty, guilty. And if we don't, we cannot go away. We got to stay on the street, and we've got to get more active. We've got to get more confrontational. We've got to make sure that they know that we mean business.
The Congresswoman later said her remarks were about, quote, confronting the justice system, confronting the policing that's going on through legislation and speaking up, and that any suggestion otherwise is a distortion. When asked if Congresswoman Waters should apologize, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said, quote, absolutely not, adding, quote, Maxine talked about confrontation in the matter of the civil rights movement. I myself think we should take our lead from the George Floyd family. They've handled this with great dignity and no ambiguity.
So Michael Steele, the judge called those words abhorrent and said that Maxine Waters may have actually given Derek Chauvin an issue on appeal. What do you think?
You know, it's interesting, Joe, in playing that clip and listening to it again, the judge almost sounds like he said two things at once. One, that, the defense may now have something on appeal, and, you know, having this elected official inject themselves into this process is abhorrent and antithetical to their oath, et cetera. But then he says, well, you know, what a congresswoman says doesn't mitigate against a conviction here, doesn't really change the whatever the outcome is here. It doesn't really play that strongly, doesn't matter. So he kind of said two things out of each side of his mouth in that respect. I think the first part was more frustration that, you know, oh, gosh, you know, really, you're going to go there right as we're about to go to the jury with this, just kind of the disruption of it, which is what I don't think the judge really appreciated. But then he realized, kind of settled in after he got that off his chest and said, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what Maxine says, because I trust the jurors, have followed my instructions, have not been following this on the news, and now will go into their deliberations with the proper instructions that I've given them and come to the right decision. So I think what you heard was more frustration from the judge, the politics notwithstanding. The Republicans and others want to make a lot of noise about it. But I think in the main, it would have been better if she not said what she said in that instance leading up to all of this. Would have been better just to kind of cool the jets. But I think the judge kind of walked it back a little bit just in that little bit into the clip there.
Yeah, you know, I appreciate what Nancy Pelosi said. And, you know, a lot of us know exactly where her heart is or where Maxine's heart is. But to be fair, when you say we got to stay on the streets and within 2 seconds later we've got to be more confrontational, that's just, we all have to really think about what we say in times like this, because that definitely touches a nerve when, you know, we've been through a year like we've been through, Black Lives Matter protests, and keeping them peaceful and strong and sending a message. But if you're talking about policy or legislation, Joe, that's different. This was talking about protests in the streets, and she kind of got caught up in it by putting two terms too closely together.